I need you to stop whatever you're doing and listen to me. Because what I'm about to tell you is the reason I don't sleep through the night anymore. It's the reason I keep my phone on full volume even when I'm exhausted. And it's the reason I will never ignore a phone call from someone I love, no matter what time it is. My little brother called me at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. I was in my apartment studying for a nursing exam. I saw his name pop up on my screen and smiled because Theo always called me at random hours to tell me something funny or complain about his roommate. I thought it was going to be one of those calls. I answered, and my brother's face filled the screen. But he wasn't laughing. He wasn't smiling. His face was twisted in pure terror. His hands were shaking so hard the camera kept blurring. He was driving on a dark highway, and I could see nothing but blackness through his windows. He was screaming at me, "Shiloh, they're in the car with me. There's someone in the back seat. I can see them in the rearview mirror. They've been there since the gas station." I told him to calm down. I told him to pull over and turn on the light. I told him to show me the back seat so I could prove to him that nothing was there. He flipped the camera around. The back seat was completely empty, just his backpack and a crumpled sweatshirt. Nothing else. No person. No figure. No shape hiding in the shadows. I told him he was tired. He had been driving for hours. His mind was playing tricks on him. I told him to take a breath and focus on the road. He flipped the camera back to his face. His eyes went wide. He whispered, "Shiloh, they're reaching for me." Then I saw something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. A hand came out of the darkness behind my brother. It wrapped around his throat. Theo screamed. The phone flew out of his grip. I saw a blur of motion, the ceiling of his car, a flash of the dark highway outside. I heard choking sounds, gasping, my brother fighting for his life. Then the call went dead. Before I go any further, I need you to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button because this story only gets more intense from here. My name is Shiloh Mercer. I'm 23 years old and I'm a nursing student in Columbus, Ohio. My little brother Theo is 19. He's a freshman at a small college in rural Pennsylvania, about 3 hours from where I live. He's studying computer science. He's smart and funny and kind. He's also the most important person in my world. When that call ended, I didn't know if my brother was alive or dead. I didn't know who had been hiding in his car or what they wanted. All I knew was that I had just watched something grab my brother from behind, and I was 3 hours away with no way to help him. This is the story of the longest night of my life, the night I drove into the darkness to save my little brother, and what I found when I finally reached him. To understand why I reacted the way I did that night, you need to understand my relationship with Theo. He's not just my brother, he's the person I raised. Our parents got divorced when I was 15 and Theo was 11. Our dad moved across the country right after the papers were signed. He said he needed a fresh start. What he meant was he needed to get away from the mess he helped create. We heard from him on birthdays and holidays for about 2 years, and then the calls stopped coming altogether. I haven't spoken to my father in over 5 years. Our mom didn't handle the divorce well. She fell into a deep depression that swallowed her whole. For almost 2 years, she barely got out of bed. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. She stopped going to work until she lost her job. Some days she didn't even speak. She would just lie on the couch and stare at the television with empty eyes. I was 15 years old, and suddenly I was responsible for everything. I made sure Theo ate breakfast before school. I helped him with his homework at night. I signed permission slips and packed his lunches and made sure he had clean clothes to wear. I went to his parent-teacher conferences because our mom couldn't get off the couch. I held him when he cried about Dad leaving. I told him everything was going to be okay, even when I wasn't sure it would be. I became his mother, his father, and his sister all at once. I was just a kid myself, but I didn't have a choice. Theo needed someone, and I was the only one left. Our mom eventually got better. She went to therapy, got on medication, and slowly started functioning again. By the time I graduated high school, she was back to work, and mostly herself. But those 2 years changed something between me and Theo. We weren't just siblings anymore. We were survivors. We had been through something together that bonded us in a way most people don't understand. When Theo got accepted to college in Pennsylvania, I was so proud of him. He earned a scholarship for his grades, and the school had a great computer science program. But I was also terrified. He would be 3 hours away. I wouldn't be able to check on him every day. I wouldn't be there if something went wrong. He promised to call me twice a week. He kept that promise. Every Tuesday and Saturday night, my phone would light up with his face, and we would talk for an hour about everything and nothing. His annoying roommate who played video games until 3 a.m., the girl in his statistics class who he was too shy to talk to, the dining hall food that was somehow both overcooked and undercooked at the same time. Those calls were my lifeline to him. They were how I knew he was okay. That Thursday night started like any other. I was in my apartment in Columbus, sitting at my desk, surrounded by textbooks and notes. I had a big exam the next morning, and I had been studying for hours. My roommate Darcy had gone to bed around 10. The apartment was quiet except for the scratching of my pen and the occasional car passing by outside. I was exhausted. My eyes were burning from staring at my notes for so long. I was about to give up and go to sleep when my phone lit up on the desk. Theo's face appeared on the screen with the words FaceTime audio beneath it. I smiled. It was a Thursday, not our usual call night. He probably had something funny to tell me. Maybe his roommate did something ridiculous again. Maybe he finally talked to the girl from statistics class. I picked up the phone and answered the call. The smile died on my face the second I saw him. Theo's eyes were wild with fear. His face was pale and sweaty. The camera was shaking because his whole body was trembling. Behind him, through the car windows, I could see nothing but darkness. No streetlights, no other cars, just an empty highway stretching into nowhere. He wasn't calling to tell me something funny. He was calling because he was terrified, and whatever was scaring him was in that car with him. I had no idea that in the next few minutes, I would watch something attack my brother. I had no idea that his phone would go dead and I wouldn't be able to reach him. I had no idea that I would spend the next 3 hours driving through the night, not knowing if he was alive or dead. All I knew in that moment was that my little brother needed me, and I was 3 hours away. Theo's voice was high and panicked, the way it used to sound when he was a little kid having a nightmare. But this wasn't a nightmare. This was real. He was gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had turned white, and his eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror like something was behind him that he couldn't stop looking at. He told me what happened. About 20 minutes earlier, he had stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. It was one of those small, run-down places with flickering lights and only 2 pumps. He needed gas and a coffee to keep himself awake for the rest of the drive back to campus. There was a van parked on the side of the road near the station with its headlights off. He noticed it because it seemed strange, but he didn't think much of it. People park in weird places all the time. He filled up his tank, paid inside, grabbed a coffee, and got back on the highway. A few minutes later, he noticed headlights behind him. They stayed at the same distance for miles, never getting closer, never falling back, just following. He told himself he was being paranoid. Lots of people drive on highways at night. It didn't mean anything. Then the headlights disappeared. He checked his mirrors, and the road behind him was completely dark. The other car was just gone. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt more afraid, because that's when he started seeing something in his rearview mirror, a shape in his back seat, a dark figure sitting right behind him. He told me he could see it in the mirror, just sitting there, not moving. But every time he turned around to look directly at the back seat, there was nothing there. He thought he was losing his mind. He thought the exhaustion from driving was making him hallucinate. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that he wasn't alone in that car. That's why he called me, because I'm the person he always calls when something is wrong. I tried to calm him down. I used my nursing voice, the one I practice for patients who are scared and confused. I told him to breathe slowly. I told him to focus on the road. I told him that the human brain does strange things when it's tired, and sometimes we see things that aren't there. I asked him to show me the back seat. He hesitated, but then he flipped the camera around. The screen showed his back seat clearly. His backpack was sitting there, a crumpled gray sweatshirt, an empty coffee cup from earlier in the week. Nothing else. No figure, no shape, no person hiding in the shadows. I told him to see for himself. There was nothing there. He was exhausted and stressed, and his imagination was playing tricks on him. I told him to pull over at the next exit, find a well-lit parking lot, and take a few minutes to calm down before driving the rest of the way. He flipped the camera back to his face. For a second, he looked relieved, like maybe he believed me. Maybe he was starting to accept that he had imagined the whole thing. Then his expression changed. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. He whispered my name in a voice I had never heard from him before, a voice filled with absolute terror. He said, "Shiloh, they're reaching for me." I saw it happen on my screen. A hand came out of the darkness behind my brother's head. It was pale and large, and it moved fast. It wrapped around Theo's throat and pulled him backward against the seat. Theo screamed. His hands flew off the steering wheel and clawed at the arm, choking him. The phone flew from wherever he had propped it. The screen became a blur of motion. The ceiling of the car, the dark highway outside the window, headlights spinning. I heard sounds I will never be able to forget. Choking, gasping, my brother struggling to breathe, thumping noises like bodies hitting against the car interior, and then a loud crash, the sound of metal and glass and everything breaking at once. The call disconnected. I sat there in my apartment staring at my phone. The screen showed the call had ended. 4 minutes and 23 seconds. That's how long the call lasted. That's how long it took for my entire world to fall apart. I called him back immediately. It rang once and went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sent a text message that said, "Please call me back." It didn't deliver. The message just sat there with a little clock icon next to it, waiting to be sent to a phone that wasn't receiving anything anymore. I opened Find My iPhone with shaking hands. Theo and I had shared our locations with each other years ago, so I could always know where he was. The app showed his location as a blue dot on a map. He was on a stretch of highway in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by nothing but empty land and forests. The dot wasn't moving. It was just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. I stared at that dot and felt something cold settle into my chest. My brother was out there alone on a dark highway. Something had attacked him. His phone was dead or destroyed, and I was 3 hours away with no way to help him. I didn't think. I just moved. I was off my chair and grabbing my keys from the counter before my brain even caught up with what my body was doing. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. I shoved my phone charger into my pocket and grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a weapon. All I had was a location on a map and a desperate need to get to my brother. Darcy's bedroom door opened. She was standing there in her pajamas, squinting at me with confused, sleepy eyes. She asked me what was wrong, why I was making so much noise, why I looked like I had seen a ghost. I told her everything in a rush of words that probably didn't make sense. Theo called. Someone was in his car. They grabbed him. The call went dead. His phone isn't working. I have to go find him right now. Darcy's face went pale. She told me to slow down. She told me to call the police and let them handle it. She told me I couldn't just drive 3 hours into the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night by myself. I wasn't listening. I was already heading for the door. Every second I wasted was a second my brother could be dying on the side of some dark highway. I couldn't sit in my apartment and wait for someone else to save him. I couldn't make phone calls and file reports and hope that help arrived in time. Theo was my responsibility. He had been my responsibility since we were kids. I was the one who took care of him when no one else would. I was the one who showed up for him every single time. I wasn't going to stop now. Darcy grabbed her jacket and her shoes. She said if I was going to do something stupid, she wasn't letting me do it alone. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to tell her to stay behind where it was safe. But the truth is, I was terrified of making that drive by myself. I needed someone with me. I needed my best friend. We got into my old Honda Civic and pulled out of the parking lot. The streets of Columbus were empty at that hour. Just traffic lights blinking yellow, and the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. I drove faster than I should have. I ran yellow lights that were turning red. I kept my phone propped on the dashboard with the map showing Theo's location. The blue dot still wasn't moving. Darcy called the Pennsylvania State Police from the passenger seat. She explained the situation as calmly as she could. A 19-year-old male driving alone on the highway. A FaceTime call showing an attack. The call disconnecting suddenly. The phone no longer reachable. She gave them the coordinates from Find My iPhone and asked them to send someone to check. The dispatcher said they would send a unit to investigate, but she also said the area was remote and they were short-staffed tonight. It might take some time for an officer to reach that location. Time. That word made me want to scream. We didn't have time. Theo didn't have time. Every minute that passed was a minute where anything could be happening to him. I pressed the gas pedal harder and watched the speedometer climb. During the drive, I tried to make sense of what Theo had told me. The gas station in the middle of nowhere, the van with its lights off, the headlights that followed him and then disappeared. Someone had been watching him at that gas station. Someone had waited until he went inside to pay and then slipped into the backseat of his car. They hid there in the darkness, waiting until he was miles from help before revealing themselves. This wasn't random. This wasn't some accident or misunderstanding. Someone had planned this. Someone had targeted my little brother and lured him into a trap on a dark highway where no one could hear him scream. I thought about all the true crime podcasts I had listened to over the years. All the stories about predators who stalked rest stops and gas stations looking for vulnerable victims, young people traveling alone, college students driving through unfamiliar areas at night, easy targets who wouldn't be missed right away. Theo was exactly the kind of person these monsters looked for. Young, alone, driving through a remote area late at night. He probably looked tired and distracted when he stopped for gas. He probably didn't notice the van or the person watching him from the shadows. He probably had no idea he was being hunted until it was too late. The thought made me sick to my stomach, but it also made me drive faster, because whoever had taken my brother was still out there, and I was going to find them before they could finish whatever they had started. We arrived at the location just before 3 a.m. The drive had taken 2 hours and 40 minutes because I pushed my car as fast as it could go. My hands were cramped from gripping the steering wheel. My eyes burned from staring at the dark highway for so long. But none of that mattered when I saw what was waiting for us on the side of the road. Theo's car was pulled onto the shoulder. The driver's door was hanging wide open. The headlights were still on, casting weak yellow beams into the darkness ahead. The engine was still running. I could hear it humming from inside my own car as I pulled up behind it. I was out of my Honda before I even put it in park. Darcy yelled at me to wait, to be careful, but I wasn't listening. I ran to Theo's car and looked inside. The front seat was empty. There was blood on the steering wheel. Not a lot, but enough to make my heart stop. His phone was on. The floor of the passenger side. The screen cracked and dark. His backpack was still in the back seat, untouched. But Theo was gone. I screamed his name into the darkness. The sound echoed across the empty highway and disappeared into the trees on both sides of the road. No response. Nothing but silence and the sound of crickets, and the distant hum of my car's engine still running behind me. Darcy caught up to me. She had her phone pressed to her ear, already calling 911 again. She was giving them our exact location, telling them we had found the car, but the victim was missing. She was asking them to hurry, begging them. I couldn't wait for the police. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on, sweeping the beam across the ground around Theo's car. That's when I saw it. A trail of disturbed dirt and broken branches leading from the road into the tree line. Someone had been dragged into the woods. Someone had fought and struggled and left marks in the earth. I ran toward the trees without thinking. Darcy called after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Every second I wasted was a second Theo might not have. I pushed through the undergrowth, following the trail of broken branches and kicked up leaves. My flashlight beam bounced wildly as I ran. Thorns scratched my arms. Roots tried to trip me. I didn't care about any of it. I could hear something ahead. Voices. Movement. The sound of someone struggling. I pushed harder, running faster than I knew I could, my lungs burning and my legs screaming for me to stop. I burst through a thick cluster of bushes and stumbled into a small clearing. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Theo was on the ground. His hands were bound behind his back with zip ties. His face was bloody from a cut on his forehead. A man was standing over him, holding something that caught the moonlight and glinted. A knife. The man was tall and broad, wearing dark clothes that blended into the shadows. A van was parked on a dirt path nearby, the same van Theo had described seeing at the gas station. The man turned when he heard me crash through the bushes. For a split second, we just stared at each other. His face was rough and weathered, his eyes cold and empty like there was nothing human left inside them. I didn't give him time to react. I charged at him with my flashlight raised like a weapon. I swung it as hard as I could and felt it connect with his shoulder. The impact sent a shock up my arm, but I didn't stop. I swung again and hit him in the face. He stumbled backward and fell to the ground. Theo was screaming at me. He was telling me to run, to get out of there, to leave him and save myself. But I wasn't leaving without him. I dropped to my knees beside him and started pulling at the zip ties around his wrists. My fingers were shaking so badly I couldn't get a grip on the plastic. The man was getting back up. Blood was running down his face from where I had hit him, but he was still moving, still coming toward us. I looked around desperately and saw a rock on the ground near my knee. I grabbed it and threw it at him as hard as I could. It missed his head but hit his chest and he stumbled again. Then I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. Faint at first, but getting louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees from the direction of the highway. Darcy's 911 call had worked. Help was coming. The man heard the sirens too. He froze for a moment, looking toward the lights, calculating his options. Then he turned and ran into the darkness, disappearing into the woods like a shadow melting into the night. I didn't care about him anymore. All I cared about was Theo. I found a sharp rock on the ground and used it to saw through the zip ties around his wrists. The plastic finally snapped and his hands came free. He grabbed onto me and held on like he would never let go. He was crying. I was crying. We were both shaking and bloody and terrified. The police found us in that clearing a few minutes later. They had followed the trail of broken branches just like I had. They called for an ambulance and wrapped blankets around our shoulders. They asked us questions that I could barely answer because my voice kept breaking. Theo was alive. He was hurt and traumatized, but he was alive. I had found him in time, and in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered. The police caught the man 2 days later. His name was Vincent Corley. He was 41 years old and had a history of violent crime stretching back almost 20 years across 3 different states. He had served time twice for assault and kidnapping, but he kept getting released. He kept finding new hunting grounds. He kept looking for new victims. The detectives told me that Vincent had been targeting young men on rural highways for months. He would wait at isolated gas stations late at night, watching for college students or young travelers driving alone. When he found the right target, he would follow them, wait for them to stop, and slip into their back seat while they were paying inside. Then he would wait until they were miles from help before attacking. Theo wasn't his first victim. They found evidence in those woods. Things buried beneath the trees that I don't want to describe. Things that proved Vincent had brought other people to that clearing before. The police told me that if I hadn't arrived when I did, Theo would have become another unmarked grave in those woods. Another missing person whose family never got answers. I try not to think about that. I try not to imagine what would have happened if I had listened to Darcy and stayed home. If I had waited for the police instead of driving 3 hours into the darkness. If I had hesitated for even a few more minutes before running into those trees. Theo spent 2 days in the hospital. He had a concussion from being hit in the head, some bruised ribs, and cuts on his face and wrists from the zip ties. The physical injuries healed within a few weeks. The other wounds took much longer. He had nightmares every night for months. He would wake up screaming, convinced that someone was in the room with him. He couldn't drive at night anymore. Even sitting in a car after dark made him panic. The sound of gravel crunching under tires or headlights appearing in a mirror would send him spiraling into a full anxiety attack. He started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma. He went to sessions twice a week and slowly learned how to manage the fear that had taken root inside him. It wasn't a quick fix. There was no magic moment where everything got better. It was slow and painful and full of setbacks, but he kept going. He kept fighting. That's who Theo is. That's who he has always been. He took the rest of the semester off from school. There was no way he could focus on classes after what happened. When he was ready to go back, he transferred to a college in Columbus so he could be close to me. We got an apartment together near my campus. Darcy moved in with her boyfriend, and Theo took her old room. It felt right having him nearby. It felt safe. Our mom flew in the day after the attack. I hadn't seen her cry like that since the divorce. She held both of us for what felt like hours, apologizing over and over for not being there when we were kids, for making me take care of Theo when I was just a teenager myself, for all the years she was lost in her own pain while we were struggling alone. I didn't know what to say to her. Part of me was still angry about those years. Part of me probably always will be. But seeing her there, terrified and broken at the thought of losing her son, I realized that holding on to that anger wasn't helping anyone. She made mistakes, big ones, but she was still our mother, and she was trying to do better now. That had to count for something. Theo and I are closer now than we have ever been. We eat dinner together almost every night. We watch terrible movies on weekends and argue about which ones are the worst. He tells me about his classes and the new friends he's making. I tell him about nursing school and the patients I meet during my clinical rotations. We talk about everything and nothing, the way siblings are supposed to. Sometimes late at night, when the apartment is quiet and Theo is asleep in his room, I think about that FaceTime call. I think about seeing the fear on his face. I think about watching that hand reach out from the darkness and grab him. I think about how close I came to losing the most important person in my life. People tell me I was brave for driving out there alone. They call me a hero for running into those woods with nothing but a flashlight. But I don't feel like a hero. I just feel like a sister who did what she had to do. Theo needed me. He has always needed me, ever since we were kids trying to survive our parents' broken marriage together. I wasn't going to let him down. Not then. Not ever. If there's one thing I learned from that night, it's that you can't wait for someone else to save the people you love. You can't assume help will arrive in time. Sometimes you have to be the one who shows up. Sometimes you have to run toward the danger instead of away from it. Sometimes the only thing standing between someone you love and the worst moment of their life is you. Theo asked me once why I didn't just wait for the police, why I risked my life driving into the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. I told him the truth. I told him that there was never a choice to make. He's my brother. He's my family. And family doesn't wait on the side of the road while someone they love is in danger. That's what love means. Not just saying you care about someone, actually showing up when they need you most, even when it's scary, even when it's dangerous, even when everyone tells you to stay behind and let someone else handle it. Real love gets in the car and drives 3 hours into the darkness because that's where your person is. If you have someone in your life who would do that for you, hold on to them. And if someone you love ever calls you in the middle of the night, terrified and alone, don't ignore it. Don't assume it's nothing. Answer the phone. Listen to what they're telling you. And if you have to, get in your car and go find them. Because sometimes you're the only one who can. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me about someone in your life who would drive through the darkness for you. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss more stories like this one. And share this with someone who has always been there for you, no matter what. They deserve to know how much they matter.